Hi, this video will answer one of life's biggest questions for you. What's the truth about heaven and hell? Are they real? Are they physical places? Are they states of mind? Or is it all just a myth to scare us? I'm going to reveal these answers for you in the next few minutes, so keep watching. Hi, my name is Brent Phillips. I am the founder and creator of the Awakening Dynamic System of Energy Healing and Higher Consciousness. And I've devoted my life to understanding and answering life's biggest questions. And I'm here to share them with you right now, right here, today, for free. So let's get into it. Just so you know, this is video number 7 in the series on answers to life's biggest questions. So if you like this video, check out the others. It's my goal to give you the clearest answers the human can possibly provide to these big questions. Now, if this is the first video in the series you've watched, you're welcome to just jam right through it. But if it bothers you that you're like, hey Brent, why in the world do you think you know this? Why should I believe you? If you wonder that and it's bothering you, hit pause, go check out video number 1. Video 1 in this series, I'm going to answer that point blank. That way I don't have to keep saying it every time for every video. So awesome, let's get into it. So what is the truth about heaven and hell? The first question I would want to ask is, what is the real nature of heaven and hell? That obviously, if we look at religion, especially Christianity, what we see is that heaven and hell are sort of like real, actual places. It's not necessarily somewhere you can go when you're alive, but after you die, it's a real place. And in heaven, if you pass, if you're good in your one life on earth, you get to be with God and enjoy an eternity of bliss and pleasure. If you are bad, if you fail your judgment at the one life, then you're sent to hell, which is a place you're stuck in of eternal torture and agony and suffering. So that's kind of the Western view. The Eastern view on heaven and hell is a little different. I kind of like the Buddhist view on heaven and hell. They will say that heaven and hell are both right here on earth. In other words, maybe heaven and hell is more of a state of mind or a condition rather than a physical place. For example, one can be angry. Anger is a state of mind. It's an emotion. You cannot localize anger to any one place. You can't say people only get angry in Africa or North America or on the moon. That's ridiculous. Anger goes wherever we have a living being with a sophisticated enough nervous system to create emotion. So anger could be anywhere and everywhere. It cannot be localized to one place. Why? It's a state of mind, not a physical thing. So in the Eastern view, heaven and hell are more like a state of mind, more like being angry or sad. And of course, you can be in heaven or hell anywhere on earth. I know that I've had times in my life where I was in hell, even though it didn't look like it from the outside. The hell was on the inside. There's also been times when I was in heaven, even though it may not look like it from the outside, but it was on the inside. So that's what we're going to answer. And I know, of course, if you're into New Thought, New Age philosophy, you kind of already know this, but I want to be really clear about what we think we know and why. Really important to discover truth. Never just believe something because someone says it or it sounds good. Give it a chance. It's a candidate. But it must be proved through validation and experience, and ideally scientific process, but that's not always an option. So, what do we know about heaven and hell? Well, first I want to do a little history, just so we have some context to understand where these ideas came from. And so most people's ideas of heaven and hell come through Christianity, maybe Islam. And they have this idea that, well, if you're good, God sends you to heaven to be with him for eternity. And if you're bad, you go to the hell to be tortured by the devil, right? Very typical. But where did that come from? Here's what's so interesting. That Judaism was the oldest by far of the Abrahamic religions, the Western traditions. It's been around at least 4,000 years, maybe longer. Christianity and Islam, much younger. And in Judaism, there really isn't hell. Not in the way we think about it. And there's not really a Christian Islamic heaven either. That if we look at artwork, especially the older artworks, of how dead people are depicted, in the Jewish traditions, they're shown as sleeping, which is a key. It was not like they were sent to some place to be tortured or entertained. They were simply sleeping. So where did this come from? Well, what happens is through history, there's not a lot of original thought. It's a lot of borrowing going on. And all of our modern ideas, our history, our traditions, our religions, our myths, are usually amalgamations of many different mythologies from different cultures and times and places. A good example of this would be the movie Platoon, would be a modern example. In the movie Platoon, you had Charlie Sheen's character, the main character, go to war in Vietnam, and all these things happened to him. Fragging, drug use, blah, blah, blah. Did all those things happen in the Vietnam War? Yes. As far as I know, they did. Did they all happen in that way to one guy? No. What Oliver Stone did was he made Charlie Sheen's character an amalgamation of many real-life events. Why? It's much easier to make a movie. You don't have to introduce 17 characters. You have 17 things happen to one character. Makes a much better story. So our religions and our mythology were largely created that way. There was an origin story that it came from, and then it got modified and combined with other stories over and over the years. It's kind of like telephone. You ever play telephone? I remember as 3rd or 4th grade, we loved to play telephone. It's crazy. You get 10 kids that all speak the same language. You write down a phrase, one kid whispers into the ear, and you go around the circle. What comes out the other end usually has nothing to do with the original message. It's crazy. You're like, how did this happen? Well, that's a lot of our religion, philosophy, theology. It's a giant game of telephone spanning multiple cultures and centuries, even millennia on Earth. So the original idea of heaven and hell comes out of Zoroastrianism, where they have this colorful mythology about this eternal battle between good and evil. That is where it comes from. And so if we look at historically, where did Christianity come from? Well, it came from Judea, modern-day Israel. What were the major religions in that part of the world at the time of Christ? Well, it's pretty simple. There was Judaism and Zoroastrianism. It was huge. So of course the stories got mixed. Of course one religion borrowed tales and deeds and characters and ideas from the other. It's just how we are. And so we got mixed up into Christianity a lot of the Zoroastrian tradition of the devil and hell, roughly based on Tiamat of the Babylonian and Zoroastrian traditions. Some of you may know the history and culture better than me. The takeaway here is recognizing that heaven and hell are not even Christian or Judaic or Muslim concepts. They're from what they would call a pagan religion. And most of the teachings we have about heaven and hell do not come from the teachings of Christ. They don't even come from the Old Testament. They come from various popes and saints that have written about Christianity and theology over the years. So Jesus didn't say a lot about it. This was all added after the fact, mostly by popes, mostly by canonizing thought. What's even crazier is a lot of our ideas about heaven and hell were only invented a couple hundred years ago. There is no basis in history for them, none at all. For example, the idea of the rapture, that there's going to be an end times, and of course the idea of the end times comes from the book of Revelation in the New Testament. But the rapture was the invention of one guy. His name was John Darby, and he was a preacher that lived in the 18th century. And he made up the idea of the rapture as a marketing tool. He thought it would be exciting and sexy to preach fire and brimstone, and he was right. So he came up with this whole mythology about how when the end times were coming, God would come down and lift everyone on earth up to heaven that's righteous and good. It's called the rapture. And all the sinners and the pagans and all the people that worship the wrong God are left on earth to suffer through it. So that was made up by a dude a couple hundred years ago as a marketing gimmick. Now, whether or not it's real or not, we'll see. Brent's personal theory is the rapture already happened and none of us got taken. But anyhow, that's just my personal theory because I don't think it's real. I think it's a marketing gimmick invented by a preacher a couple hundred years ago to get more people into church, and it worked. And other preachers came and said, hey, how'd you get all these people? I told this story, and they started telling it. And now a good chunk of the world, probably at least a few 100 million people, believe this is the God honest truth. It's the gospel straight from heaven. And anyone that disagrees or doesn't believe it is an infidel and you're going to go to hell. Doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? But I want you to see that so many of these ideas we have do not come from Jesus or Buddha or Muhammad or our great teachers. They come from regular people looking to make a buck. Secular aims had nothing to do with religion or spirituality. It was just a manipulation. So, given that, let's talk about the idea of heaven and hell and whether or not we can get there and what to do if we are. So, what we've seen so far is that our ideas of heaven and hell come mostly from Western religious thinking, and most of them are relatively modern. They really aren't based on the teachings of our masters like Jesus or Buddha. They're just tools people have used to get ahead. And now we accept it as blind faith. So what's the real truth? What's really going on? What do you really need to know about heaven and hell to have a great life and a great afterlife? I'm going to answer that for you. But first, please take a moment, click like, click subscribe. I know every YouTuber does it. It's kind of annoying, but it's super important. Because if you don't subscribe, you won't get notifications. And if YouTube doesn't know you like this video, it won't show you to others. And then I go, well, I'm going to stop doing this because no one's watching them. So if you like a video from me or anyone else, make sure you click like, click subscribe, let YouTube know. If you want to go deeper into this, if you want to experience your own awakening, find your own truth about God, you might want to check out my 30 Days to Awakening guided tutorial designed to give you the knowledge as well as the subconscious block clearings and internal transformation to open you up for complete spiritual awakening. And for most people, it doesn't even take 30 days. Most people start their awakening by day 10. And then it just gets better from there. So if you want to learn more, if you want to go deeper, if you want to find the ultimate answer that you've been looking for all these lifetimes and generations, it's here. Links below. I'll even give you a big discount. Awesome. So what's the real reality here? What do you have to know? Well, first, I would say that based just on the history, our ideas of heaven for eternity and hell for eternity are nonsense. Doesn't work that way. However, I think the Eastern idea, more the Buddhist thought, at least that's how I found it. I have no doubt it's in other places. I'm just very familiar with Buddhist philosophy because I've read a lot of it. Been a practicing Buddhist off and on for a couple decades. I think it's good stuff. Though honestly, I don't think of myself as a Buddhist or a Christian of any of that. I think of myself as a human that studies and practices lots of these things because there's value everywhere. There's value in Christianity. There's value in Islam. There's value everywhere. Why not learn from all of them? That's how I think about it. So I think the truth is much closer to the Eastern concept. Heaven and hell are both right here on earth. All you have to do is change your belief systems, change your perspective. And so I've certainly been in hell, even though I looked okay. I've also been in heaven, maybe when I looked like I didn't. It's all on the inside. And the good news is there a basis for this? Sure. Is it blissful after we die? Of course. Because you're losing your physical, emotional body. If you don't know about that, check out the earlier video in this series about what really happens after we die. And so, what is it that goes to heaven or hell? That's kind of the best question. What is this you that goes to heaven or hell? Is it a mind, a body? Well, I don't think it's the body, because the body stays on earth, right? We bury it, we burn it, we throw it in the ocean, something like that. And the mind, well, it seems like the mind is not here too, but the soul should be eternal. So maybe it's the soul? But if it's you and you're having experiences, there has to be a mind in which to have that happen. And if you're being stabbed in the back by a devil with a pitchfork next to a lake of fire, you got to have a body too. So do we go blissful after we die? Of course, because you're released from polarity. You're back in the Garden of Eden. There's no more pain. You can finally heal. You are truly at peace. When we say rest in peace, there's a lot of meaning there. But at the same time, we can create that on earth. You don't have to die to get there. It's just that if you do, it's an easy way. Fun fact from history, the assassins were a cult within Islam, originally called the Hashashin. What did they do? They would kidnap teenage boys and put them into a special pleasure garden. They would get alcohol and they'd smoke weed and take opium and have sex with beautiful women in this pleasure garden. And then they would at some point pass out, and when they'd wake up, it'd be gone. And they were told, you're being inducted into the assassins. You got a little taste of paradise. And if you die in the service of the assassins, you will go to heaven and you will be given your 72 virgins and basically have paradise for eternity. So they took young boys, teenagers, gave them an experience of getting drunk and high and stoned and having sex, and then said, hey, no more of that for now, but you get this for eternity when you die. And it worked. It really did. They became some of the fiercest, most important warriors and spies in all of history. They could literally change the course of history with one flash of the blade. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. But that's how powerful belief is. And so at the end of the day, all this stuff is just stories. Why? The real you is eternal. There's only one of you. You, the real you, cannot be sent to heaven or hell because you are not a soul, you are not a mind, you are not a body. You are the awarenessing, the eternal presence, the all that is that can never be created or destroyed. You are the divine, that spark of awareness. So the rest of it is actually less important. Even the soul is an aspect of the non-physical ego, still part of the ego because it's separate. So at the end of the day, don't worry about it too much. You're in heaven and in hell all the time and everywhere in the middle because you are everyone and everything. And again, I get that's hard to wrap your head around. Until you're fully awake, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It'd be like if I said numbers to the next lotto draw, but I said them in Japanese. You could hear the sounds, but they wouldn't mean anything to you until you learn the language. It's kind of like that. Until you learn the language of awakening, it can give you lots of words, lots of good sounds, but it won't quite click. But just know, everyone goes to heaven. There is no hell. One of the things Neil Donald Walsh said in Conversations with God, that got him absolutely crucified in the press. I remember reading a review in Newsweek back in the 90s, just tore him to pieces. More negative than any other book review I'd ever seen. It was because of one line the reviewer couldn't handle. It said, Hitler went to heaven. So I'm here to show you the truth. Whether you like the truth or not my problem, can't control that. But yes, Hitler went to heaven. That's all I got to say about this for right now. Make sure you stick around because we've got some really important and cool stuff coming. We still got 2 more videos coming in this series. In video number 8, the next one coming up, I'm going to explain to you exactly what the Holy Trinity is and what it represents. Because that always bothered me as a kid. It made no sense. I finally got it. And I'm going to share it with you. And it's really important stuff if you want to ascend your consciousness, perhaps even get close to enlightenment. So I am Brent Phillips signing off. And until next time, please take care and namaste.